Greetings everybody and welcome to Metal here on Prog Monster. My name is Murph and I am the host of this show, a show dedicated to progressive rock and other forms of rock music. So here we are, Thursday night, doing an episode of Metal, which comes out every second week. I've been listening to this band for about a week now, listening to all their albums, listening to their music, trying to get a real feel for them as a group. And the group we're talking about tonight is called Voyager. They're an Australian band, a prog rock metal band, I guess, a prog metal band, if you prefer. They do have some different sound to their music than you might think of when you think of prog metal. I always think of Dream Theater and bands like that, but this particular band, they do definitely have that prog metal sound to their music, but they have other elements to the music as well. So I've listened to all 7 of their studio albums. I haven't listened to the 8th one. That one I'm going to be doing a What's New video with. The album is called Fearless in Love, but I didn't really listen to that one because I had started this before I realized they had a new album. So because I'm doing that separate, I'm not going to bother with that one for now. Anyways, they have 8, they have 8 now, but they have 7 previous studio albums. Band formed in 1999. I think it's in Perth. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's in Perth, Australia, Western Australia, of course, as a progressive metal rock band. Now, their music is very complex. I have to say this about all 7 of their albums I listened to. They are all very good production, really good sound. They have one of the best metal vocalists I've heard, vocal wise. His voice is almost unmetal-like. He's got a very operatic but clear sounding voice. And his name is Danny Estrin. So he, I think, is the only original member left of the band. I could be wrong, but I think he's the only original member left in this band. But he also plays keyboards. He likes to have that kind of guitar keyboard part where he plays it. Very, very dominant on at least their later stuff anyways, not so much on their earlier stuff. And I'm not sure, but I think he played just as much keyboards on the earlier stuff. It's just that the guitars were more dominant in that time period. Anyways, I'm just going to talk a little bit about their 7 albums that I've listened to. Starting with the first one, which also has the most tracks. It has 15 tracks. Element 5, released in 2003. The band had been together about 4 years. Finally got a record label and put together this album. They do some death vocals on this, death metal vocals on this as well. There's a bit of a growl. I'm not sure who was doing them, but whoever it was, he did them pretty good. And they were used timely too. They weren't used throughout the whole song, but at different periods of some of their tracks, they would have these death vocals, which were really, really added to the music, I found anyways. The lead singer, Danny Estrin, has a really kind of operatic voice. He can be very low, medium sounding, or bass if you prefer, and then become, or alto I guess is the word, and then move right up into tenor, and just really can get that high note, but it's always smooth. He always has a very smooth voice. It's one of the things I like about him. There's a lot of prog in these albums, but I think there's kind of a mix of prog and metal together. It's probably about equal on this particular album. I think of all of their albums, I like this one the best. Some very heavy guitar parts on this album, and the lyrics are very well written, which is a bit understandable because based on what I've read, the vocalist Danny Estrin is also a lawyer by day, so he has some skills, this boy. Anyways, really strong album, Lots of heavy guitar playing here. I think the album itself has that kind of a cosmic, spacey feel to it almost. Yeah, it's I think the best. Sorry, I said it's about 4 times there. I think it's the best of their albums. It's the one I enjoyed the most. So then they did their next album. It was Universe. They lost their record label, and the album was ready to go, and then they finally ended up recording it. It's got this big band kind of vocal style to it almost on some of the tracks. Similar classic sounds as the Element 5, but not as heavy. It's not as heavy an album. There are some death vocals here too. I think they're just as prominent. Yeah, pretty much it's not that much different of an album. A little bit more mainstream, maybe a little bit less proggy, a little more heavy. No, sorry, the other way around. A little more heavy, a little less proggy. Yeah, that's I got it backwards again. Less, yeah, not as heavy, a little more proggy. Getting all confused there. Anyways, a really solid album. I don't think it's as good as their first album, but it's pretty good. So then their next album, I Am the Revolution, which came out in 2008. It's the first one of their 2 albums that they have on Riot Entertainment. Similar elements to the first 2 albums. Lots of catchy riffs. A little bit more keyboard and synthesizer here. I think the guitars are toned down a little bit, but that may be because they switched a couple guitarists, and there seems to be less guitar dominated as there was on the first 2 albums. A little bit more keyboard sounding here. I would describe this keyboard. I was trying to think of a way to describe this guy's vocals. They're almost like a sweet sound to them. Now they do a video from this. Well, they do videos on all the albums, but this particular one I remember. It's called the Devil in Me video. It's basically about vampires. It's just memorable. I just found it a memorable video. Of all the stuff I watch, this is the one I remember the most. I think it's a heavier album than the predecessor, but it does have a kind of a commercial sound to it. There's almost some poppy kind of dancey sounds to their music here. This really doesn't make any sense. I don't know how you go from a prog metal band to a kind of a dance music band. I don't know. But anyways, there are some, towards the end of the album, there are a fair amount of that element on this particular album. The next album, The Meaning of I, which came out in 2011, also on the Riot Entertainment label. 13 tracks in total, which is about average for them. A lot more synthesizers and keys like the predecessor, similar in heaviness to its predecessor as well. There is one song that's in a different language, and based on the title of it, I believe it's German. I believe there's a German sound to it, which might be, maybe there's a German kind of element to their music. Maybe some of them may have a German background, I'm not sure. Anyways, that's their 4th album. Their 5th album, which is just simply called 5, has 13 tracks. There's a little more of that classical sound on this album than there was on the last 2 or 3. The first one had a lot of it. This one has a little bit more than the previous 3. Released in 2014, the first on the Lav Records label. It pretty much is very similar to their previous album. Vocals, of course, are the strong suit of this band. He has full control at this point. His vocals are great. There's a little bit more keyboards. He also does play piano, not just on his keyboard piano, but also like what do they call it? Grand piano type piano. Yeah, very good piano player. I don't think he's a super strong piano player, but he does add that element to the music quite a bit. So the next album out is called Ghost Mile. It's the last on the lab of the record label. Really good production on this album. I think it's maybe the best album production-wise of all of their stuff. It's a very similar album to the predecessors. A little bit more piano on this, though. I think he starts to break out here with the piano a little bit more, and it's a very classical sound. And then, of course, the guitars are extremely heavy. This is, I believe, the first album with Simone Dunn is I think this is her first album on guitars, and I'm not sure if Scott Kay, I think he was there already, so the two of them playing guitars here, pretty strong. They're a pretty strong duo. Then you have Colors in the Sun, which is the last album I'm going to be talking about. Their other one, Fearless in Love, I'm going to do a separate video on because it's a new release. Colors in the Sun, released in 2019 on Seasons Records, and I think it's a German label, if I believe correctly. I think their new album is also on the same label. I'm not sure 100% about that, but I think that's the case. Very similar to their previous album. Quite a bit more piano here. This is the last two albums that they did, the Ghost Mile and Colors of the Sun. Only 10 tracks on each. I don't know about you guys, but that suits me more. Both these albums are around 40 minutes. That's about the maximum you're going to get my attention for. Anything more than that, and I'm struggling. So I found that I was more ready to listen to these two particular albums a little bit more than I was some of the predecessors, just because they were shorter overall. So, who's in the band? Okay, so they've had some lineup changes over the years. But the band is Danny Ezrin, vocals and keyboards. He's got the long hair on one side and shaved on the other side. Yeah, I think it's this side that's shaved. Simone Dunn, guitars. She's pretty rockin'. Yeah, pretty rockin'. Alex Canyon, he's a bass player. Scott Kay is the other guitar player. And then Ashley Ducorte. That's it, I got it. Ducorte, he's on the drums. This guy's pretty wild. He's got hair everywhere. He's just flying around out there. Very fast-paced drummer, too. They have an element of speed metal to their music as well. It's pretty much on every single album. Not as dominant as in the early days as it is later. Like, they do a lot more of it now than they did early on. There seems to be a mix of metal and more keyboard-oriented prog music than there was early on as well. And to be honest, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I just think that they've put out 7 or 8 albums and they know pretty much how they want to make them now. So it's not as the first couple of albums, there seemed to be on the first album was a lot heavier, and then the second album was a lot more piano and stuff. And I think that's because they were experimenting more, and now they seem to have found the range that they want to stay with. I find the last 2 or 3 albums very kind of mainstream, kind of metal sound. Yeah, there was some speed metal and some death metal vocals in there. The death metal vocals aren't as prominent later on in their career as they were earlier on, but they definitely have that prog metal sound, almost bordering. Some of their music's almost bordering on pop, though. Pop dance kind of sound to it. So you might want to call them a progressive metal, maybe dance pop band. I'm not sure what you want to call them. An interesting band, though, and a good listen, I think. You know, if I had to recommend one of their albums to listen to decide if this is a band for you, I would go with their first album, Element 5, if you like that really heavy stuff. If you like more heavy prog, that's the album I think you should go for. if you're liking a little more poppy sound, maybe a little bit more prog sound, maybe a little bit more classical vocal style music, almost like I always think of the crooners from the 40s when I hear this guy's voice. He has a very croonerish voice. If you like that, more of that sound, I would go with some of the later albums like Ghost Mile and Color in the Sun. Those are a little bit more accessible that way. The band itself is pretty tight. I think the last maybe three albums, including the new one, I think they've had pretty much a solidified membership, if you want, or personnel, band members. Yeah, all these 5 guys I said, I think they've all been on the last 2 or 3 albums since about 2017, so about 6 years together now. Sounding pretty good. It's definitely a band worth checking out, I think. But again, this is new for me. I'm new on the metal thing, and I picked a band that I didn't know much about, who had a fair number of albums, but not an overwhelming amount. I want to kind of work my way up to that, because you can. There are some metal bands out there that have like 20, 25 albums. You can be spending weeks listening to that stuff. But anyways, it was fun to do this. This is still kind of a work in progress. I'm not quite sure how this is going to go or how it's going to evolve. Basically just want to give some attention to some metal and get myself into it. And I found that by the time I'd listened to all 7 of these albums, I kind of got a familiarity with a lot of the main players in it and the style of their music and the feel of their music. They're definitely a prog metal band, maybe a little bit more on the classical side of the prog though. Anyways, I hope you have enjoyed this episode of Metal. If you did, please like and subscribe. If you got any comments about this band or anything about anything I've said, or if you want to add something to what I've said, or you want to correct something I said, by all means do that below in the comment section. Because just keep in mind that I'm just learning about metal. Yes, I had a metal history when I was younger. That's the reason why I want to do this. But for anything that's happened from the 80s, mid 80s onward, I'm a novice, so I'm learning the ropes here. So this is pretty good stuff though. I think I enjoyed it. I think this is a band that I will enjoy, and we will be doing a What's New video featuring their new album Fearless in Love by Voyager. So hopefully it'll come out well and everybody will enjoy this. So take care, and we will see you next week. We are doing the return of the Forward Champion. It looks like we might have a crowned champion already. This has been very popular, this new Forward Champion, and some people have put to me that it would be better if it was done weekly, so there wasn't so long a wait for the champion. So we'll give it another week, another 2 weeks stint here, and see how that goes. And then if people really like it, then maybe we move to having it every week and give it its own night, and then give somebody else metal to work with. So hopefully we'll see you again next week for the Forward Champion, and take care. Bye.